He mentioned it recently. What do you think might happen to Cuba?
I mean, if you'd asked me this a week ago, he was absolutely ready to put whatever pressure necessary to overthrow the government of Cuba, which I have no positive feelings about, let me say. This Iran thing is going so badly that I do wonder if there is a little bit of second thoughts on that. I think they're obviously going to continue to put pressure on. I think that they would like for the Cuban regime to collapse under its own weight. And I think that they probably want to do it. But I think it's a little bit Iran contingent right now.
Do you think the leaks, or what seem to be leaks that say Trump is now having remorse about making the decision to go into Iran, is that, do you buy that? Do you think that there's any recognition internally that they think actually we shouldn't have done this?
He doesn't really seem like a remorse person to
Not
me.
a remorse guy.
I don't know. Trump is like, to understand the psyche of Trump, he sees himself as a survivor and lives day to day. I mean, there have been so many times that he's been down, and you never want to hand it to Trump. But he's been bankrupt how many times, and how many times the tabloids went after him, and he was broke, and then he gets this lucky break with the TV show, and then he never thought, he didn't think he was going to win in 2016, and then he thought he was going to be in jail in 2021, and here he is. And so I think that maybe there are moments where he's like, I wish I didn't do this, but that's not how his lizard brain works. His lizard brain is, how do I survive this? And he's like a day-by-day type person.
Got it. Hi.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
One question you did not address was the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
The Supreme Court situation, that is on this list of things that is under the bucket of norms, right? And I think that had you come to me 3 years ago before he was reelected, my opinion would have been, I think Mitch McConnell stole a Supreme Court seat. And I think that we should just be very blunt about that. And yet, I'm not sure what the value is of trying to deal with expansion or all these kind of other plans that get thrown around in liberal circles. Now, I think that whoever the next president is, their most important thing that they're going to have to do, and this is going to be challenging, as we said, about how people who want to push them to work on the economy and healthcare and stuff, is some broad reform package that could include Supreme Court, could include D.C., Puerto Rico statehood, could include, other corruption rules. And I do think that has to be on the table for the next Democratic president. I think it's going to be very challenging, though, where in order to do that, a lot of these conversations skip the first step, which is, how do you do that? Well, do you have to get 60 senators? Are you going to end the filibuster to expand the Supreme Court? Maybe, but what are the consequences of that? A lot of hard choices.
There's a be careful what you wish aspect on the filibuster, right?
Yeah, a lot of hard choices there. I mean, I think that they'll end up getting rid of the filibuster, but
the guardrail of that used to be the court. I think that's.
I'm less catastrophic. I'm sorry, my apologies. I thought your question was those questions about reforming the court. The current court, I'm a little bit less negative than your average liberal pundit about this, because this court has overturned him more times than any court has overturned any president since FDR. Now, he's been more lawless than any president since before FDR, so you would expect that they would do that. But I think when push comes to shove, and we saw this recently, on the 6-3 ruling, I don't think that Roberts and Comey Barrett want him to be a dictator, and I do think that if push comes to shove, they would stop the worst of the worst. They're going to allow a lot of nonsense, but I do think that they're a slight check still.
Good. Hi.
Hi, thanks for being here. I was wondering what your opinion would be about what it's going to take to turn the tide, and what we can do as individuals to help shift the story that's unfolding now.
Bottom up as opposed to top down.
Yeah.
You mean individuals doing the work to...
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of concerned people, and we don't want to just sit on our hands and listen to...
Well, look, as I said, I think that Minneapolis was an absolutely major inflection point, and I think you can see the power of regular people in that, because the behavior of the government changed. The behavior of Democratic politicians changed. The behavior of CEOs started to change. They started to see that the administration can be pushed back on. So I do think there's a No Kings rally coming up. I do think that is really important. I think that working at a local level and volunteering local candidates. I was talking to the guy that does the state house stuff here in Texas, and like they think they can win between 5 and 15 seats. That's not as sexy as the Senate race, but look at those races. Tarrant County, he was talking about Rio Grande Valley. How can you help those local candidates with either time or money? I think would be a good use of people's time. And the one thing I do like to preach in people's individual lives is like, it's going to be really hard to get to deal with people that got us here. But like the only way for us to fix this is to convince and compel people that got sucked up into this, that voted for them, that were fooled, that were tricked. And so I do think in everybody's personal life, like we're all going to have to buck up and try to, explain and try to, give people an off-ramp if they see the error of their ways. Those would be the three things that would come to mind.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Anybody else? Ma'am. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. My 30-something daughter calls the No Kings rallies pep rallies, not protests. I find them cathartic. But at the last one of the speakers said, how many people know what they're going to go out and do tomorrow? And my husband and I looked at each other and said, we have no idea.
Yeah.
Do they have any value besides making us feel good for a little while?
Nothing wrong with feeling good for a little while, I guess I'd say. I hear you. Look, they're not, I understand the sense of like, oh, this isn't cool, right? Or, there's something, it's not one battle after another to go to the No Kings rallies, right? But it matters. Like seeing people out there in the streets opposing this matters. There is a strength in numbers element to this. There have been a lot of, just look at the cowardice we've seen from the law schools and the colleges and the corporate leaders and stuff.
Law firms.
Yeah, what did I say? Law schools, law firms. Yeah. They, those folks respond to a feeling of, oh, if they think that they're going to get boycott and punished for going along with the regime, they might change their behavior. And so in that sense, there's a ripple effect. And so I think that showing up to protests do matter, doing boycotts do matter in this moment. As I just said, I think that helping local candidates, particularly ones in kind of red or swing areas or districts, really, really does matter. And I don't know, I reject I think that there is a sense among some on the left that it's like, it is over. It is over. We're not going to have free elections anymore. What we need.
Do you
now
worry
is,
about that?
I don't. We're going to beat him this time. Like there are going to be elections.
And you think
in
there are going to be
November.
elections and they'll be free? I'm not saying that I think there are not going to be, but I'm asking.
There are going to be elections in November, and they're going to be free. And there is a sense of like, oh, it makes you. I think that some on the left, it makes them feel more wise or learned or whatever to catastrophize and to talk about how things can't get better. And I just don't believe that. I think that there are a lot of things that are now permanently harmed from this election, as I just said, that things can get better. It is going to be too big to steal. They tried to rig the midterms with the redistricting already. They tried. It backfired because Gavin Newsom and Abigail Spanberger and others stood up across the country. Right. And people are like, oh, Steve Bannon, they're going to have ICE outside of voting booths. I'm like, put ICE outside of voting booths. That's great, actually, because you know what's going to happen? A lot of people, like your daughter probably, and some of her friends, who feel like, this is not worth turning out, they'll get pissed. And they're like, yeah, wait, I'm going to vote. They're not going to be able to keep me from voting. A lot of times, not always, it worked in Jim Crow, it's worked in certain times, but a lot of times voter suppression efforts actually backfire because people get mad and they decide that they want to actually turn out. So I do think it's worthwhile, and I don't think you should get down about doing it and feel good. This is wrong with feeling good for a day.
Right. Thank you. All right. On that rare upbeat note, we're going to let Tim Miller go to the airport. Give him a big hand. Thank you all very much for coming. Good.
Thank you.
Man, you did great.
Thank y'all so much.